Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Your Legislators, a production of KRWG Broadcasting. Your Legislators is a public service program providing our viewing audience in southern New Mexico the opportunity to hear about important legislative issues directly from their elected representatives in Santa Fe. Here's your host, Sloan Patton.
Hey, welcome to the program. On our show today, we'll be talking with Mary Helen Garcia. She's the Democratic representative for District 34 in Doña Ana County, and she joins us now from the Roundhouse in Santa Fe. Mary Helen, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Definitely. So I understand that you used to be a school principal.
Yes, I was.
Well, so the first question that I'd love to ask is what do you think about the state of education in New Mexico, particularly in southern New Mexico?
In southern New Mexico, is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
Yes. I think we're doing very well, really. I think Las Cruces Public Schools under Stan Rounds is doing extremely well. You know, they're at a time they went through several superintendents, and now they're all grounded and they're all moving forward. And there's great programs going on, is my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And in Gadsden, I haven't had the opportunity, but I think they are also doing well.
Okay. One of the issues that I've heard brought up by a lot of people and that I keep hearing from when we talk to people is the issue of a high dropout rate in high schools. I think we have somewhere between 60 and 70% here in Doña Ana County of high schoolers will graduate. What do you think the biggest things we can do to stop such a high dropout rate?
Well, that just gives me a wonderful segue to get into what I have been promoting now for the last 3 years, and hopefully maybe I will get it out of Education Committee this session, and that's that our children are not reading at a proficient level, starting the third grade and fourth grade. And I think that the reason that we have a great deal of difficulty with, or students have a great deal of difficulty, is because of the fact that once they start the fourth grade and on up through the middle school and the high school, is their reading is below grade level. And what happens at that time, they are having to read a lot, to read for content, and I think that that's one of the biggest concerns, and that's what I'm trying to promote at this time during this session. And I have the support of the governor, and I have a Republican, Kate Kernan, that's carrying it for me, for my same bill over in the Senate side. I think it will address many of the issues that have plagued our students. And also, I think what happens is that many of our students are second language learners, and second language learners usually come into the United States or have been here, or their parents have chosen to speak Spanish at home, and many of them do not learn English until they come into the school district. And I think there's a misconception, I've said it over and over again, that you have to learn to read in 2 languages. And having been a principal and having had my master's in reading, I learned that you only learn to read in 1 language, and then you make the transfer over.
Mm-hmm. Right. I know here in Doña Ana County we have University Hills is one of those schools that has Spanish-speaking students as well as English-speaking students, as well as some others. Well, with your bill, what does it do differently than some of the other bills that have been introduced? How is it different?
Basically, my bill is it's success in reading through remediation and intervention, and intervention through remediation. And what it does is that we will at kindergarten. We will start at kindergarten, and every student in the state of New Mexico will be assessed starting at kindergarten, and this is where the governor is putting the money in. Therefore, if they would move from one district to another, you have a baseline of students at where their proficiency level is. And we have some assessments in my bill that will address that need. And then we know, then you start the remediation there at kindergarten. You have it at first, at second, and then at third grade. If they are not at the proficient level that they're supposed to do, that's when we have, they will be retained at least for 1 year, only 1 year. The reason I've had trouble with the bill was because in the previous years we did not have a form where parents could opt out not to have their children retained. This one, in my bill currently, the parents will have that opportunity to do that. There will be a form that they will have to sign that they will state that they do not want their child retained. And then it will be up to the responsibility up to the parents to carry this load on. And therefore, I don't think we will have well, it won't come back to the schools to say the schools did not do their job. And my bill failed in education the first time around. I hope that maybe perhaps somewhere before the session ends that we will be able to pass it. In my bill, the parents can participate 6 times during between kindergarten and third grade. Every year, they'll have an opportunity to meet with the assessment team in the school, with a principal, and so they will understand where their children are having to be remediated, and that there's a specific time that that will be carved out in the school day, so that they can have this intense one-to-one with teachers. I dropped my phone. Sorry, I dropped my.
Oh, no worries.
The earpiece.
No worries.
Okay, and they will have an opportunity to participate. Another component of the bill is that children will have to attend 95% of the school year. I think that this is one of the greatest problems that it still encounters our schools is high truancy, and it becomes worse as the children move up in the grades. And the reason for it is that I feel is that their reading level is not at what it's supposed to be, and they're having more and more difficult time understanding what's taking place in school. And this not only affects their reading level, but it affects their literacy level, which includes reading and writing, of course. And I think that many children or students will feel that it's becoming a challenge, and they rather not go to school. And I think that that's the reason we have a large percentage of children not graduating or having to go through remediation to enter college.
Mm-hmm. Well, and how much of it is parents' responsibility? I mean, at what point do you think the state can only do so much, and it's then up to parents to deal with some of these problems, truancy and a high dropout rate?
Absolutely, the parent has a very important part in their children's educational life. However, we'd still have many parents that do not have the literacy level or the English ability to really take an active part in their school's education. And it's not through that they do not want to. It's just that they feel intimidated in the participation part.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to take a look at some of the other bills that you have out there. HB 515, I noticed was one of them. It's training and suspension of municipal officers. And that one, from what I understand, that training has to be completed by municipal officers within 6 months, and then if they don't complete the training, there's a penalty, a suspension after a year of being elected. what prompted you to introduce that bill?
Basically, what prompted me to do this was because of the concerns of the elected officials in Sunland Park. I think, and it's not only in Sunland Park. My understanding is there's other municipalities throughout the state of New Mexico that this is occurring. They're elected, and I don't think they quite understand the responsibility that is before them. They have to have some good reading skills, some good English skills, and because they have to make a lot of decisions that concern literacy again. And so I think it all ties back to the fact that I think we just have to continue to produce literate adults.
Mm-hmm. Did people in the legislature seem to support this bill along with you?
I think so. I haven't gone through the first committee with this bill, but I think there will be, some concerns also in the bill. I've also included that when this elected officials, if they have a limited English vocabulary, that they have that the information is presented to them in their native language, which is usually Spanish. And Spanish is required in the state of New Mexico. Our teachers are required to teach the children that come in that are second language learners in their native language, and it's in the Constitution that we have to provide teachers that will address these needs.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and some of the stories out of Sunland Park were just almost, shocking about the voter fraud that happened there. And so it's certainly understandable that you would want to bring a bill in to deal with that. With when the governor introduced her proposition to with the driver license law, that deals with voter fraud, but in a much different way. How have you dealt with the voter fraud, or I'm sorry, the driver license issue since you've been in the session?
I'm chairman of Voters and Election, right. And in the previous years, this has come before this committee, and of course, we're all concerned about voter fraud, but really, it's really in a very small percentage that's occurring. And I think certainly with what happened with Sunland Park, all the other communities throughout the state of New Mexico will be very cognizant of this issue. It has not come up this time. I think the bigger issue in this is the voter ID. And currently we do not have voter ID required. It has happened. It happened in this previous election cycle. And I'm not sure if we ever will have voter ID because the Native Americans do not have a voter picture. Mm-hmm. Something that has to do with their culture.
Right. Would you ever support creating a law that requires a voter ID and maybe making an exception for Native Americans? Is that something you hope to do in the future?
No, currently I will not, and because we also have a lot of our elderly that do not have pictures, and our aging population in the state of New Mexico. I had a sister-in-law that never took pictures, and so it would be very difficult. It would be very difficult to implement.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about HB 516.
Okay, tell me the title. I sometimes know it better.
Sorry, yeah. That one's the Municipal and Corporation Requirements bill, and that one deals with requiring services and revenue, describing services to be provided, including, it looks like inside of a petition for the local government division.
Disincorporation? Is that the one that's in disincorporation?
Oh no, this is the incorporation one.
Well, there's no incorporation. This is disincorporating. What it would happen to be is that a lot of our municipalities in the state of New Mexico certainly don't have the people in place that are able to carry the duties of those municipalities. And so they would have to vote to disincorporate. If they can't maintain physically the necessary duties of those municipalities, or be able to, and one of them is Sunland Park, because see, we encountered that problem again. Many of them have not been able to get in their audits on a timely manner to the state, and DFA is concerned about it, and so they will disincorporate and go with a larger county.
Right. Were there any other places besides Sunland Park that motivated this bill?
Yes, there are, and you know what? I don't have my list before me at this time, but I know that Lake Arthur was one, and I know that there was 2 or 3 other ones in the northern part of the state.
Sure. Why do you think that Sunland Park had so many problems in the last few elections?
I think it was a culture issue, and hopefully it's all resolved now. They had been doing this for several years, and now what happened, I think it's all been resolved, and hopefully they can move forward, and I'm there to support them, and so is Joseph Cervantes in whatever they need assistance at the state level.
Mm-hmm. And since you are the chair of the Voters and Election Commission, or committee rather, what did you all talk about this week in the meeting?
Oh, we had a very challenging one yesterday, and that came before us. We had a 3-hour discussion on and I can't remember the bill number. I should have brought up all my bill numbers before. I mean, I could have reflected, but no, it was House Joint Resolution 3. I'm sorry, and it had to do just remembered. It had to do with increase of minimum wage. And it went on for a lengthy discussion, and there were some amendments that were brought forth. And finally, the vote, I voted with the Republicans, and so I was the tiebreaker in that meeting. My reason for it was because of the fact that it would become a constitutional amendment, and I do not believe that it needed to be in that arena. It needs to be a statute, but they brought it forth as a constitutional amendment, and it cost the taxpayers $49,000 to put any kind of a constitutional amendment on the ballot. And so that was the reason that I broke ranks with the Democrats, and so it passed. It died 6-1.
Right.
I mean 6-5. Sorry.
Right. Yeah, 6-5. And if I understand correctly, that resolution would have placed a vote on the next election for voters to decide whether to increase the minimum wage or not. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. And then, you know, we're also concerned about the mom and pop places that have, they were concerned that they cannot increase their prices like most restaurants, large restaurants can, to take care of these needs. Then we were also concerned that maybe of the larger ones would cut back on their people, the waitresses and anyone else because of this. Being here in Santa Fe for the last 16 years, everything was thriving. There were many boutiques and nice shops open, and I've seen a lot of storefronts closed down. And I really think this is because of the minimum wage that they have demanded here in Santa Fe. And I was a little concerned that that would happen, especially to our small communities throughout the state of New Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Right there in Santa Fe, the minimum wage is above $10, and in Albuquerque, it's around $9. So here in in Doña Ana County, do you see yourself then voting with the Republicans on the next bill that's coming up that would increase the minimum wage for the rest of the state?
I don't know which bill that is. I'd have to read it before and study it well before I make a decision on that one.
Sure, sure. But in general, you, I think it's interesting. You do side more with Republicans when it comes to the minimum wage.
At this time, yeah, yes, and again, I want to clarify that I voted with them because of the process,
right.
Because it would be and I don't think it belongs in the Constitution either. I think municipalities have to make their own decision. Cities do too. We're a very diverse state, and that's where we have to allow local decision making to be implemented.
Mm-hmm. And so this week you're also a member of the Business and Industry Committee there in Santa Fe. What happened?
Yes.
What's been happening over the session in those meetings?
Right now it's going very, very smoothly. We were able to come to a consensus in it. If out in the audience there's some disagreement with a bill that's before us, our chairman usually asks them to try to get it resolved between the two parties, and if they can come up with a consensus, it's better that way, and we vote accordingly.
Mm-hmm. What are the bills that you've been sitting there and have had longer discussions with, or there has been more disagreement with? The one disagreement, the biggest disagreement occurred when it was brought before us to open the liquor businesses, to allow liquor businesses to open up on Sundays and holidays, Christmas holidays, and that was defeated. Mm-hmm. How did you vote when that came up?
I voted against it. I'm not in favor of opening up. We have a large DWI concern in the state of New Mexico, and I think the laws are well, opening up on Sundays. We just need not to do that. There is one that's coming up, and I think I will vote on that one. Opening up, and the reason that I would go along with this one is because I have a business in Sunland Park, Arduinos, and it's of course, they have business coming in from Texas, and Texas allows serving liquor starting at 10 o'clock instead of 12 o'clock
right.
On Sundays. And that one I would probably vote for. I'm sure I would vote for, because I was introducing a bill that would address the needs of any businesses on the borders where, like such as Texas, that liquor is allowed earlier on Sundays.
Mm-hmm. So that bill would work with just specifically the border counties?
Yes, just border counties.
Okay, great. Well, so with the with DWIs, do you see yourself voting for stricter laws in that regard?
Absolutely. It's unfortunate, but we still have a great deal of problems and concerns with our citizens in the state of New Mexico with excessive drinking.
Mm-hmm. Is it a cultural thing, you think, or just sort of a tradition?
I think it's more cultural, yes, absolutely. We have a great deal of problem with our Native Americans.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, so with the state income tax, do you think that New Mexico's state income tax is being spent wisely, or are there some places where you really think that we need to make some cuts?
Oh, the income tax issue, there's many pieces of legislation that are being proposed to us now, and I think we have to revise our income tax laws in the state of New Mexico. However, I think a combination of all the legislation that is going through now, we're going to have to really be astute and understand what we're going to vote on, because it can be very detailed, and there's lots and lots of loops in the state income tax. Company after company comes for tax incentives, and so we'll see what the result is. It might not happen this session, but I think we're going to have an intern committee during the summertime to look at that issue, and then come forth in the next session, since that will be the budget one.
Mm-hmm. Well, we don't have too much time left, but I just want to touch briefly on the film industry in New Mexico. Albuquerque was ranked 8th overall in places for movies to film. Las Cruces is home to NMSU and the Creative Media Institute. Are there any things that you think should change to bring more of the film industry to New Mexico?
I think for right now, it might be all right, but I think there has to continue to be more incentives and more rebates, possibly going back to the film industry. We have a beautiful state. We need to recruit as many people to want to come and film here, and hopefully maybe this will take place as we move through, not this session, but maybe perhaps next session. Okay.
Well, Mary Helen Garcia, thanks so much for joining us today from Santa Fe. And thank you for joining us for another edition of Your Legislators. We'll see you next week.